to a weekly YouTube series where we talk about the various different research papers that have been published by our students after they have successfully completed the project and they were one of the best members of the project team. So, joining us today, we have Ashwini. Ashwini, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Aditya. I'm really happy. It's my pleasure to come up here.
Yes, and it is definitely our pleasure to have you join us today as well. So,
Thank you.
uh, Ashwini, you worked on the research paper. Can you tell us a little bit about the project that you worked on?
Yes, Aditya. Thank you. So the project that I was working on, it was basically a cement manufacturing automation type project. The problem that we faced or the clients were facing was that, after every manufacturing of the cement, there needs to be quality checking. So if this quality checking is of low quality, or if it's not good, then the whole thing has to be discarded. So this time needed is used to be around an hour. So that is a lot, right? So a lot of time, and because of that, their cycle is very low. Then the whole thing had to be discarded. That would mean we would have a loss of revenue, also manpower, and mainly the demand would not be met. So that was the issue. So to tackle it, what we suggested was we could use machine learning because that could, reduce that time cycle. So that was our objective. Objective was to minimize the manual inspection cycles. But however, with that, we do have our own business constraints, that was basically to minimize the cost. So we had to do it in such a way that they don't have to spend a lot in correcting it, but also, could reduce the time of the inspection cycles. Um, Aditya, you're muted.
Sorry, are you able to hear me now? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Ashwini, what kind of data were you dealing with
Mhm.
when you were
Right.
working on this project?
Right. So the kind of data I was dealing with was basically numerical. Of course, like initially we had to do our own research to collect the data, like go to understand the data as such. We had to go to different research papers and understand how the data could look. But eventually we got a sample data from the client itself, and then we processed it and we worked on it.
And do you mind just walking us through quickly just walking us through this project architecture
Mhm.
that we see on our screen?
Sure, Aditya. So as you can see, data collection part, we got some sample and we were processing it. So when I say processing, there is a step in the middle, that is EDA, exploratory data analysis, where what we did was we took up the data and we try to see what is the pattern that you see in the data itself. So like, are there, nulls, or are there duplicates, things like that. And we try to see what the data looks like. After that, we try to pre-process the data, basically clean. And when you let the data enter into the machine learning model, it needs to be in a certain manner. So that's what we did during the pre-processing step. Also, we used visualization tools like Power BI, where we could see exactly how the pattern was, and then we could reiterate the whole process to, make it standard in order to let the machine, let it into the machine learning models. So after that, what we did was we worked on building the model itself. Then, like, that itself was a long process. Like, different models needs to be tested, and best accuracy, whichever model gives, that needs to be selected. And then we need to evaluate the model as well. So that was like a really long process. Then we deployed the model in the local server, and later on in the AWS deployment server. In local server, we use both Flask and Streamlit. So the team, like we came across, and we kind of deployed it there on Streamlit. So that was basically the process that we followed.
Hmm. So, when you were pre-processing the data, did you face
Right.
any challenges?
Oh yes, a lot, because the data, as it is, it will not be in the standard form, like normal form. We had to see, and there were so many missing processes. Actually, the major issue that we faced as a team is just before we entered the pre-processing data, like the data that we got, the sample was not in the format that we wanted. It was not straightforward. So we had to do some circus around to get it to that standard format. So that was like a real struggle.
So, these are some of the models that you tried.
Hmm.
Do you mind just telling us what was the thought process between the
Hmm.
models that you tried and which was the final model that you selected?
Right. As you can see, we tried different, majorly since the data was in the numerical format, we used regression kind of models uh, to train. So we used ensemble models. I'll come back to that. We use different like data decision tree. As you can see here, decision tree gave us about 94% accuracy. And then we also used XG boost, also gradient boost. We did start all the way, from the basic multilinear regressor as well. And we also tried using network like MLP regressor. We tried using that. However, we did get good accuracy, but we felt like there was something missing, and that's when we went up to ensemble model. We used the stacking ensemble model, where our MLP regressor itself was the base, right? Base learner. So we realized, like, we basically checked using the MAP error detector, and then we figured out that the best percentage, the best accuracy was given by the ensemble model. That was around 96%.
So, this is the final output that we
Right.
see. So, can you just help us understand what we see on our
Mm-hmm.
screen?
Sure, Aditya. So this is basically, as we can see, you have just added the data. This is the output of the Streamlit as such, right? So you have added the data, and as you can see here within that, the data is numerical, of course, and as you can see, the dimension of the data is also a lot. So you can clearly see that there is a lot. There's a huge dimension. The output of what we basically require as an output is the best residue, right? So that is what we were trying to find out using this model. So what was the expected output? That could be something people could ask. That is basically trying to you know um, get the historical data. This is exactly that. You take the historical data and see how much time it needs for that historical data to take, and then predict that particular residue. So that is what this slide basically shows. It's trying to predict. So it's taking the data in, and it's trying to predict what kind of residue that particular cement might have in that particular batch. So I think that sums it up.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. So, one final question that I have for you here is, um,
Right.
what do you think, like, talking about your experience here of working on the project and then working on
Right.
the research paper, how do you think that this overall experience helps you?
It helps a lot, because we as a team, we need to build communication, and we need to understand how each other is supposed to work. That is what one thing you learn. Second, to write a paper, it's very cumbersome. Like, you need to edit it, you need to draft it. That also is a skill, like you learn that as a skill. And finally, the most important thing is the paper itself. Like if you put it in your resume, it holds a lot of value, especially it being the international journal paper. It holds a lot of value. So I think that itself is like a huge deal.
Hmm. So thank you so much, Ashwini, for joining in
Mhm.
today and
Thank you.
explaining this project in a lot of detail.
Mhm.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. And this is, of course, your certificate for the work well done. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Aditya.
And thank you, everyone, for joining. Please do follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn for further such content. Good evening, everyone, and see you guys next time.